going to talk about the market. We got to know what the market looks like and what it's doing and potentially where it's headed, right? In order to advise our buyers and sellers correctly. So I pulled this up, and as you can see at the top, this is from your market insights. I have 3 counties selected: Boone, Hamilton, and Marion. Okay, we can separate those out, but these are the most common areas that my business happens. So that's why I watch those 3. You can obviously add the counties that you want to watch, and we can separate these out individually. Okay, here's some of the important things that you need to be watching right now. Okay, what numbers are slowly going up? Number 1, this 98.6%. That's important for sellers to understand this is where we're at right now. Okay, because here's what you've got to remember. If they weren't in the market, they're hearing about 100%, 103% potentially sometimes. And while we do still have markets that are doing that, right? We're in a transitional market. We're doing a little of both everywhere. You still need to have your sellers prepared to negotiate a couple percent. Okay, so it's just a really important talking point to set expectations directly from the beginning of taking a listing. Okay, if we price it where the market is, we have to expect that we may need to negotiate some. Okay, this is interesting. 2.2 months of supply, and it actually went down. So it's up from last year, but it went down from last month. So that's an interesting number to watch also, because the month supply of inventory is actually what tells us what kind of market we're in. Okay, so do you guys remember when we had negative months of inventory or 0 inventory? So now we're back to 2.2 months of inventory. I'm going to share another screen real quickly, and then we're going to jump back into that. So now let's look at the national numbers. Okay, so those are our local numbers. And now let's look at some of the national numbers, because national is eventually where we're ultimately going to head. Okay, so while for Hamilton and Boone County, you can kind of watch Marion County for our super local, where we might be headed. On a national level, watch these numbers, and it's likely where we're going to end up. Or, right, follow the same path. We won't end up where these numbers are. Sorry, that's not what I mean at all. But follow this path of where things are going. So nationally, these are the May numbers nationally, and median sales price is still going up. No change in the existing sales. That's interesting, because that's what all the economists are saying, that our inventory may level out. And 32 days on the market. The days on the market are getting longer, so you have to be more aggressive with your pricing strategies. And the months of inventory on a national level are up 4.4. Okay, so that's important, because when do we shift from a seller's to a buyer's market? Right? It's when we get to 6. So if the national level is at 4, they're getting into that national transitional market. We are seeing a transitional market most definitely on the local level. So I know when you guys are taking listings, some of them are sitting and you're like, what do I do? Right? That's why we're having this conversation. You have others that are going like this, still getting multiple offers, escalation clauses, all of that kind of stuff. So it is your job to really study this market and understand it so you can advise your buyers and sellers. Okay, so let's just go back really quickly and let's look at our numbers, and let's talk about if we're going in to advise a seller and how we're going to discuss this with them. Okay, so what knowing the days on the market does for us is it tells us kind of how quickly things are going. It tells us how much competition we might have out there, right? And that's the key. The entire key is to be the one house that the buyers are going to choose to actually write an offer on, right? So we've got to make sure that we can do that, all right? And watching these are important. Okay, let's look at just Marion County. Let's take Hamilton and Boone out. That's the average of all of them. And let's just take a look at Marion County, because it's quite substantially different when you take out the northern counties. Okay. However, list price still at 98.2 and the months of supply similar. This is going down also. Interesting that the national and Marion County are going down. It's a good sign for us. Okay. Now let's jump into the script book. Okay, so we are going to be on page 14 in the script book. I'm going to make that a little bigger before I share it with you so you guys can see. And I'm just going to run you through this script, okay? and we're going to talk about it. And then we can talk about it, how it actually relates to the numbers we kind of just looked at. It is important for you to understand this script on page 11 and 12. Is that what I said the pages are? 14 and 15 for any conversations in the market. Okay, so if you're sitting there with this script book and saying, where in the heck do I start? Start here and just understand how to explain the market to your clients. Okay, so let's just start there. When we talk about the market, it's really important to understand what that means. That means the houses that are traded on the MLS. Okay, so it's just like the stock market. There's a trading platform we have for sellers to put their houses on and buyers to come and access them. And by pulling them all together, it's what created the market. Okay, the supply and the demand that we watch. Okay, so as we talk about the market, we're talking about what's happening to the houses that are currently on this system and being traded within this platform, because that's how we can compare to what we're going to be doing and where we'll be. Okay, so we are going to watch your hyper local market. Okay, so we're going to know the national numbers. We're also going to know your hyper local number. And what this is going to tell us, this is important for you guys to know, how fast are homes selling? How much leverage do buyers have versus sellers, right? Who's in the driver's seat? And how sensitive the buyers might be to price. That's your list to sale price, right? How sensitive they might be to price right now. My job is interpret that so you do not overpay, miss opportunities, or lose leverage without realizing it. Okay, this is the reason you've got to know how to have this conversation, because it is that valuable to your clients that you don't miss these things. Okay, then it jumps into the buyers and the sellers in the transitional market. I realized, I think I said this last time and I never changed it. These graphs are backwards, so don't look at the graphs next to it. They're actually in the wrong spots, but it gives you the same idea. Okay, so a buyer's market. We haven't seen a buyer's market in a while. However, we're starting to see them some places, right? Your houses that are sitting, the reason they're sitting is because there's more competition. There's more buyers out there. They're being pickier. They're taking longer to make decisions, right? And if you are not at a price that they think this is a fantastic deal, I'm going to snatch it up right away, you might be sitting for a little while. What our numbers are telling us is that you might sit for 14 days before you see an offer. Okay, so be prepared for that if you're selling in a buyer's market. If you're selling in a buyer's market, we have to be much more aggressive, right? No, sorry. When the buyers are leading the market, they're making the choices. They're in the driver's seat. So we have to be much more aggressive on how we price it and what our condition is. Okay, because they're in control. They're going to be much more picky on us. Right? Our feedback's going to be a little bit more intense. Yep, that's how you know that you might be selling in a buyer's market, is when your feedback is coming back with pickiness. That means your buyers have time and choice. Okay? So let's talk about a seller's market. This is the other half of our market right now, right? It's going fast, they're flying off, that kind of stuff. How does it feel in a seller's market? When you're selling in a seller's market and you're the seller, you got lots of buyers that want your place. They're begging for it, right? And what sort of situation does that create then for your sellers? It creates an opportunity where we don't have to negotiate much, right? We might get lots of offers. We might get people giving up inspections and all that kind of stuff. So we might really get to be picky on this one, right? It's the buyers that don't have a lot of choice, and it's us as the sellers that do, okay? So it's really important when you're watching your numbers, your actives, your pendants, right, in their neighborhood, in their areas, what is happening. Because right now we are in, because of what we just talked about, a transitional market. Okay, so they typically say that a transitional market is when you have 4 to 6 months of inventory. We are seeing it at a 2 months of inventory. Okay, so I think keep that in mind. Keep an eye on that as you watch, because our market will be different than what other markets do. Okay, so since we're in a transitional market, it is harder than ever. Okay, there is no real clear seller or buyer's market. So here's what gets confusing is We know what's in a seller's market and we know what's in a buyer's market. Why? Because we live in these markets. We understand the mentality of the buyers, the sellers. We understand what makes them go and what doesn't. Your clients do not. Okay. So it is so important that you are able to explain to them we are in a transitional market. It is very possible you will sit at the table with a friend next week and they have had a completely different experience selling their house than you might. That's why this conversation is so important because you could have two completely different sellers that have two completely different experiences right now and under your guidance, right? Okay, so that's the market. That's how this transitional market gets very like, right? And where you've got to really be on top of it and understanding what kind of market are you guiding them into. If you do not know, look at the pendings. Okay, look how long the pendings were on, and then look at your 30-day solds if you can. You got to be that small on your market right now in this transitional market because you know how fast this stuff changes. Okay, so a lot of the conversations that I'm having right now with top agents is sellers wanting to overprice. Are you seeing that, Rhonda? Yes. Okay. So that is exactly why I wanted to do this today because number one, they're overpricing and you've got to really be ready to know if you're going to take those or not, right? You've got to really, really hone in because here's what's happened. It can cost you a lot of money. What our biggest mistake can be, I'll just take it and then we'll reduce it later, right? If you're going to do that and it has to be reduced to succeed, build that in up front. Okay. Don't take a listing saying we'll talk about that later and that's how you're going to succeed. Okay. You got to discuss that right up front. Okay. Second, your sellers have to understand that their pricing is a strategy, right? So are we going to pick a strategy that sells it fast? Are we going to pick a strategy that sells just as the market's going? Are we perfect with that? 14 days, 2% negotiation room, right? Or do we want to be a house that could potentially sit on the market because we're not very motivated and we don't really have to do anything. So we're okay to sit on the market longer than 14 days. Then it has to be up to you whether you're willing to let them do that because there is a cost to that decision, right? There is a cost to that decision. And you've got to be able to talk them through that, what that cost is. Okay. Now, when you get to that part, that's when you're going to talk about the time on the market, right? And how your first you have the initial up ramp time, and then all of a sudden you get all your activity right there. When it's a seller's market, you're going to get it in the first 24 to 48 hours. When it's a buyer's market, you're going to get it in the first like 3 or 4 days. And you've got to make sure you are priced right to sell it in that window and that your sellers understand that window and how we have to price it right. Then they have to know, of course, right, if we're adjusting, when and how to adjust. Okay. Rhonda, do you have anything specific on pricing and choosing the pricing strategy that you're dealing with right now? Stephen
I
also, but I know you're driving.
yeah, I have three listings that have been sitting
Okay.
and I
Okay.
I tell them, comp wise, they're sitting well, but we're not getting
What's
showings.
that mean? Okay.
We're overpriced. And I've
Okay.
told them, and they're like, well, can't we do that? I have marketed every which way possible. We're not getting showings. Without showings, we're not getting it sold. The only thing we can do is attack the price. And I've said that until I'm blue in the face. And
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
that's so
Yeah.
I'm right in this boat and frustrated.
Okay. I love it. Okay. So let's talk through this. This is an awesome coaching moment. Okay. So what I find when sellers are not willing to reduce is that there's something wrong with their motivation, something wrong and they're ready, they're willing, or they're able. Okay.
Mm.
So take one of your sellers. You're kind of shaking your head. So I think you already know one of your sellers. What's the issue?
They don't want to give the house away and they want
Right.
to, but they don't have to move.
hmm Okay. So they're not
And
necessarily ready
mhm,
and they're not willing to do what they need to do in order
mhm,
to get the market, right? To, yeah,
mhm,
accept their house. And I literally would use those words with people. The market is rejecting your house right now. And here's why I know. The seller or the buyers are out there, they're looking online and they're not choosing to come inside. There is something that's stopping them when they compare it to all the other houses out there that's making them choose to see those and not ours. What do we need to do? Sometimes making them look at the actives and their competition is really good and say, how can we get the market to accept ours over some of these?
mhm.
Okay. So that's one thing if they're not willing. And I will tell you, some people you've got to hit them with a mutual release,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes they'll do what you say once you do that, right? But it's you get to that point where it's like, how long do I sit on this property without it selling, letting it tarnish its value potentially, right? Because we know it, the value is the perception of the value is going down every day it's on the market. So at some point you say, at what point do I have to protect you now and say it's probably better to just get off the market because you're in the wrong market. We need to wait and let the market catch up to what you want to happen. And this is
Yeah.
a great conversation because how high are they?
That's part of the problem. Square foot
Okay.
wise, they're sitting
Yeah,
very, very well. They're, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
but their their house looks like a toy store.
Okay. Yeah, it's a condition
And
issue. It's not a price issue. Yeah.
right.
And
And
that's a hard one to talk about.
well, and the wife absolutely refuses to pack up toys. She's like, no, won't do it. And I'm
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
okay. We have taken the toys out of pictures. Um, we have, everything that I
Yeah.
can think of.
hmm
And,
Yeah.
I had this conversation yesterday and I got them to come down $1,400. And I'm like, okay. And because it's a huge house, it
Yeah.
just, people,
Yeah.
people just drive by it. And we
Yeah.
actually had
Yeah.
one showing, and then they were like, "Oh, we got held up. We'll reschedule," and nobody's ever rescheduled.
Never rescheduled. So it's like they looked farther at the pictures or the inside or something like that, drove by. Yep.
And
Yep.
said no.
So I mean, yeah. So the market is rejecting them.
Hmm.
Right? And they have to understand that. And it's our job to figure out why and how we might fix that. And then
Yeah.
if they don't want to, then you have to have the other conversation. Well, then is it better for you to just come off the market?
Yeah.
Because talk about what is the price? Just the general, or give me a fake
So,
price. I don't even care.
no, 649.9.
Okay. So we're at 650 and let's say the property should be at 600. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
that's about what is that, 20% decrease? Look, I did the math and then I couldn't even. Um, Let me do it the other way. Yeah. Okay, so that's about an 8% decrease. Okay, so what we have to tell them is that, okay, if we're off by 8%, what do we know the market appreciates on average every year? Four
Hmm.
in our area. So they'll have to wait 2 years at this rate for the market to catch up to where the value of their house is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good conversation to have with them to be like, okay, here's where I think we need to be to sell it right now. So your option is sell it right now for six, or I think we need to wait 2 years until we get to 650 and talk about what those costs could be, right? What those carrying costs could be, what the damage could be, what the, yep, effects that could have on your property as a saleable entity. Okay,
Yeah.
so you got one of them that just doesn't have motivation. Are the other
Hmm.
ones motivation also?
It is. I
Yep. Okay.
there's one of them that has a first right, and we've extended the first right. I'm amazed that the sellers have agreed, and yet we've dropped 5,000 and we've had three showings in 60 days. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we've got to
Yeah.
bring the price down. She doesn't want to because
Hmm.
she wants all the
Hmm.
money so she can put it in the new house.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And that's a really good conversation too to have, Rhonda, because we got to get them understanding what the market will bear, right?
yeah,
Just because you want that doesn't mean that's what the market will give you right now,
yeah,
right? And who determines the value of the properties? The
the
buyers,
buyers. Hmm.
right? So we can sit there and we can shoot our goal, right? We can pick our price and say that's where we're headed, that's where we hope we land. But the market is ultimately going to be what guides us and tells us if we're right or we're wrong. And right
Yeah,
now it's telling you you're wrong, right?
yeah,
So maybe getting them to understand that also, that just because that's your goal, the buyers are not okay with that. And they're showing us they're not okay with that. So now we have two options. We either get to where they're okay with that, and we keep trying to reduce our price, or we should probably just go ahead and take it off the market, relieve you of the stress, wait 2 years, let's sell it when it comes back. And sometimes they go, ah, wait 2 years, and panic a little. But that's how you can really test their motivation, right? Is
yeah.
when you threaten them with a mutual release. And guys, here's the thing, Rhonda, what's happening to your mental state as you sit on these three houses?
I'm going crazy. I'm like,
Yep,
I literally, I have done everything. And
everything. Okay. And so it makes you question yourself. It makes you lose your confidence, right? And it has nothing to do with you. It's the market. But this is exactly why, as a business owner, it's so potentially harmful to take the overpriced listings, because look what it does. It used to stall me in my tracks. I would wake up at night worried about my listings that were sitting. And I'm like, this is costing me so much time and energy that I could be using on other things.
mhm,
Right. And so at some point, you kind of have to look at that too, because, right, it gets in your head, it gets in your ego, it gets in your everything. It starts affecting your numbers for days on the market, your numbers for, list to sale price.
right.
And so, yeah, there's a most definitely a repercussion on our mindset that happens when you carry these overpriced listings. So, number one, no, it is not you.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the whole thing. We've got to take this off our shoulders. All we can do is advise them and tell them the truth. And sometimes that's where the reject word becomes hard, because you say, listen, we've tried this for a while. I've really tried to be nice and stuff. And now what I've realized is we're just truly being outright rejected by this market. And we have got to do something to change that.
Mhm.
Um, what about listings coming on the market? Are you still having this conversation with listings that want to happen, that they're wanting to push it higher?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got two right now where
Yeah.
I was I mean, I was in that higher point where I said,
Mhm.
this is, we can try on the higher end, but I think we're going to be more in the middle. And I mean, a two-bedroom, two-bath house, and the guy's like, yeah, it's not enough, it's not enough money. It needs to be higher. And I'm like, I said,
Yeah.
but we're gonna know right away showing. I mean, if we're not getting showings, we're not getting activity, you're overpriced.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
So, Rhonda, talk to me about, and Stephen, if you have the place to write it in the chat box, you of course are welcome. We're not ignoring you. Um, what numbers are you using as far as, if we go how many days without an offer, or how many showings? How many days without a showing, and how many showings without
yeah,
an offer?
I am trying 2 weeks,
Yeah.
just
Yep.
because we should have showings within two
Yep.
weeks.
Yep. Yep. I
And
completely agree. It should be sold in 2 weeks. That's what the
mhm,
numbers are showing.
yeah,
Right? So that's
yeah,
what you need to maybe sit down with them and say, here's what the numbers are showing. We should have been sold in 2 weeks. And it says the number of showings. Have you pulled those before in
Yes.
Market Insights? Yep. So it'll tell you the number
Mhm.
of showings in how many days. So then you can say, we should have had 9 showings by now, and we've only had 2. We're clearly not in the market, right? Because our numbers are
Yeah.
trailing what the market's saying. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that might help you a little bit be able to show them, what do you want to do? Do you want to sit on the market, or do you want to actually get sold? And
Yeah.
then decide, do you want a listing that doesn't want to sell, which is hard because you don't know if it will or not. That's the other thing, guys. We just don't
Right.
know. Sometimes we think at the beginning they're going to do everything we say, and then you get there and they're like, nope, I changed my mind. I'm not. Right? I'm right. You're wrong. All that kind of stuff, which it happens. And the clearer you are about making sure they understand this stuff, right? Their numbers, what the market's doing, how they're acting in the market, right? Your weekly seller updates are huge in this instance. I'm not sure if you've been doing those yet, have you? Okay, great.
I haven't been. Well, I
Yep,
have conversations, but
yep. Okay, I'm going to recommend you do this. And this is kind of a great time for you to do it, because if you can find a stop point in your listing, okay, so if they've been on the market 2 months, that's when I'd go back and say, okay, I'm going to do a market update for you, and I'm going to summarize what's happened in the market for the last 2 months. Okay, and then let's look at it. Since you've listed, there have been this many new active listings. Okay, so you're going to show them how many houses hit the market. Since you've listed, this many have actually sold. This many buyers have chosen one of the houses on the market to buy, and not yours. Right? The number of showings that are happened, the summary of any feedback, and then their online activity. So when you're sending this every week, here's what it looks like. I'm sharing my screen again for all of you on the phone. So this is on page 16, and it shows you, Rhonda, what it'll look like every week. Okay, so 17 explains why we're watching all the things. So week 1, you want to use the first one, the one that explains, here's why we watch everything every week. Then every week, you just send them this quick, it looks just like this section. Okay, here's what happened in your market in the last 7 days. New active listings, and you link to them. New pendings, closed, numbers. Okay, so sometimes when you show them that every week, number one, they get tired of seeing zeros. We're getting no showings this week. We've had another week with no showings. 3 houses sold, we've had no showings. 2 houses sold, we've had no showings. Okay, so we can tell them, and they just don't hear it. So sometimes you have to show them, and that's what this does, is it shows them, it puts it right back on them. You are seeing the market, you get to interpret how you want to react to it. Okay, so maybe try that with your listings. Go back and pull these numbers on all of them and see what kind of story it tells. And if you were to put that story together for your current sellers, could it help them make a better decision about where they're priced currently? Okay, and then circle back if you want to talk about those. If you pull them together and you're like, wait, this seems crazy, or I don't understand. And everyone use these updates. Every Monday afternoon, you should be sending these to your buyers and your sellers. It goes through what to include, why you should include it and watch it. And then on page 19 is the buyer update. Every buyer you have out there looking, it is very important to keep them updated on the market. Right? We started this whole thing with, we're in a transitional market, and it's more important than ever that you understand these hyper-local markets and what they're doing. And this is the best way for you to understand what's happening out there. Also, is to be doing this homework every single week, right? For every seller you've got in all these areas and price points, and buyers the same. Okay? All right, you guys are awesome. Thanks for being on. It is 9 o'clock. Go have a great week, and I will see you next week.
thank you.
Bye.